This is like finding your roots, right?
So, I
You're Dr. Lewis Gates, and you look very similar to him.
yeah.
But he has a cane. Do you have a cane?
No, I don't.
Um, I think he has a cane. What if he didn't have a cane?
I'm taking pictures of you. I'm taking pictures of everything. A woman likes to roam. A woman likes to everything.
So wait a minute. So do I take him out and
Yeah.
then
So if you're cool to talk about it, if you're like, I don't mind that photo
this is
being
Moonwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my
That's
god.
also why I wanted to have you in.
Oh my gosh. So you were taking pictures at Moonwork.
Yeah.
It's it's so weird because I've been doing comedy 5 years. No, I've been doing comedy forever, and there's so many different chapters, and there is like, when I talk sometimes Ted Alexandro opens for me a lot, and we'll talk about these waves, right? Like, there are significant waves, and, like, Moonwork was this really unique kind of alternative, but not alternative. Well, it was on Sullivan Street?
That's the thing. I can't remember where it was.
It's
Carol.
it was at a school kind of auditorium, and it was run by this theater group that was raising money for productions, and they kinda curated like, the king of Moonwork, I think of, is Tom Shalhoub,
Tom Shalhoub, yeah.
and Tom's brilliant, and some of it was this, you know, theater mixing with stand-up. So, obviously, we're in the West Village, and, the Comedy Cellar is legendary, and, but this was a different type of thing. So, it was some of the, spoken word like, what Tom was doing was a little bit spoken word.
Yeah.
And there was some music and folk music and sketch but it was very um it's weird because alternative comedy had started before this, but this was a different kind of alternative comedy. Like, I could go off on what I think is so fascinating about alternative comedy. What I think, and this is not, I'm not talking about alternative comedy. What was so fascinating about alternative comedy was it started initially in New York at Rebar, right? And there were, these comedians that were like, we think of, like, David Cross and Bob Odenkirk, which were very kind of unconventional comedians, and that was kind of the spirit of it, but Mark Maron fit in perfectly with that, but it was hosted by, uh, Jeff Ross, who
Oh,
at that time was Jeff Lifschultz. But, like, it was this kind of out of the clubs, kind of let's experiment kind of thing. And so that was before that. This is in the '90s, and there was so this alternative, the seeds of it were at Rebar, which was kind of this bar in Chelsea, and but really, what I consider alternative comedy landing in Brooklyn at Union Hall,
yeah.
and the king of alternative was, um, Eugene,
Yep.
and that goes back to Rafifi,
Yep.
right? And so some of what was whether it be, what was so unique about how long I've been doing stand-up is the Eugene Merman Festival, which probably has some photos in there. You have to understand, there were people that moved to Brooklyn when Brooklyn was gentrifying or whatever we wanna call it, and it was these young people that moved to Brooklyn that would go to these Eugene shows, the comedy festival thing. And what happened is there were so the length of time was so extensive that these young 20-year-olds got married,
Yeah.
had kids, and moved out of the city. So in a way, it aged out of itself.
Yeah.
And, Eugene eventually moved to Cape Cod and all that.
Yeah.
And, obviously there's a rich, bar scene, and then, of course, that there was Brooklyn, and then there was the rise of Queens with, that whole scene.
Yeah.
Because when I started stand-up, there was this it was after this mini boom. I mean, we're existing in the most incredible boom in stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
No one could have contemplated, but, like, when I started, it was like there had been these cable shows to do stand-up, whether it be, Evening at the Improv, Caroline's Comedy Hour, MTV Half Hour Comedy. They started before I even started stand-up. But what happened is that stand-up, the quality on those shows got so weak that it
Yep.
ended up being a joke in itself. It ended up being a joke on The Simpsons.
I am so glad that you said this
Yeah,
because I got a whole rant about it
yeah,
and how the quality
yeah,
has to be kept good. And every time I see somebody do a poor job and there's a walkout, I remember when it was hard to get butts and seats at a show, and it makes me mad. And I, Michael Jordan meme, take that personally.
yeah,
I
yeah,
get so mad. You're absolutely right.
yeah,
It was a glut of the comedy shows,
yeah,
and it became almost a caricature of itself.
yeah, where, like, the people that would go to Rafifi or go to Moonwork would never go to a comedy club because there wasn't an expectation of quality. And so now that shifted
Yeah.
where the people, they have like 80 shows at the Comedy Cellar in their different buildings because there is an expectation of a certain quality.
Yeah.
But like in the early 90s, early aughts, that was not the expectation. And so the people that would go to Moonwork or would go to Rafifi or would go to some of these Brooklyn venues would never go to a comedy club.
Yep.
They would never, because uh they were it wasn't considered artistically fulfilling. Alternative comedy was not what we view it as now in its normal version, like the shows that are happening in Brooklyn. I mean, I used to, for me, I mean, we're going way back, but for me, once I started doing theaters, I would, and I was buddies with Eugene. All comedians know each other, but I would desperately want to do these alternative shows so that it could purify some of the bad habits that you would get at a club. Now, that being said, I think comedians do what they're gonna do. Like David Cross is gonna be David Cross, whether you put him in any environment. But there is something about uh, whether it be Rafifi or Largo in LA that has kind of like, don't give us, it's kind of like going to a fancier restaurant. If you're doing mac and cheese, it better be high-end mac and cheese.
Yep.
And stand-up is mac and cheese, right? But here, so we should look at these, right? Do I take them out?
Yeah, so take them out, and we're just gonna be kinda trying to make a collage in
Yeah.
real time. So, yeah, this is the first time I saw you perform. This is, March 16th of 2008.
Wow. Moonwork was, I mean, it was such a special community and a special audience there. So I think people would pay like $20 and they could drink as much beer as they wanted.
Yeah.
And it really was, it's not an original concept, but they had this theater community, they had the venue, they had the formula. So they would, I mean, it paid for pretty significant amount of productions there.
Yeah.
And I would relish performing at Moonwork because it was a quality audience. And sometimes I would, squeeze it in if I was in the city. Like, there were people that you would see there that, like, you don't did you ever do surf reality?
I was there once, but without a camera, and
Yeah.
I don't remember anything. But I will say this is you back again at Moonwork. This is January of 2009. So you appeared there often, and you always were doing different material. Like, I never saw you repeat anything at Moonwork. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the ideal audience. It's weird because there's so many different venues, and so I look at the I'm trying to figure out, is this a different venue? It's
Yeah.
oh my gosh. The Bowery Poetry Club is unbelievable. It's no longer there, now it's Join Park, right? But the when I started stand-up, again, there was no expectation of ever making a living. There was a lot of people that were doing stand-up in 1991 at open mics. You got a sense, oh, this is just they can't afford therapy, so they're going
Yeah.
up there and talking. And so they're struggling on a lot of different levels, and Bowery Poetry Club was, obviously, it was a poetry, it had beat poets, a rich history of it, and kind of that PS in this Bowery area. But I lived right near this.
Yeah.
So Jeannie and I, my wife, we would go and do a set, and then you would hang out and you would, this is like a beer was like not, I mean, now
Nothing. Yeah.
it was like, maybe it was $2 for like a PBR, and you'd be like, oh yeah. And so we would get our kids to bed, and then I think it was a Wednesday night show once a month, and there were just insane people, insane people. And the audience was a lot of an eclectic mix. So it was like the remnants of authentic East Village, right? And so I remember seeing Jesselnick go up there, and obviously he's brilliant, and he came off and he's like, I've never despised an audience as much as because it wasn't like what Anthony does that's so well is he knows who he is, and he was presenting this kind of, this character that's like indifferent, but he was presenting it in front of people that were like, yeah, we're indifferent too. Do you know what I mean? But you can say that about a lot of places in New York. So, all right, let me guess what this one is.
Yeah.
This is the Monday night midnight show,
Yep. That's Whiplash.
Whiplash, which was, I mean, that's he's Arkansas, Jeremy.
Jeremy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Jeremy Levenbach.
And I always know where people are from. But like that was a super prestigious show, right? And it was a lot of NYU students, but you would see people go there and just tank. If you were the wrong comedian for that room
Yeah.
and they weren't buying it,
Yeah.
is this the idea of what we're
That's
doing?
exactly it. Yeah. And this is August of 2009.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I don't even know if I have 5 kids at this point.
Yeah.
I still have that shirt.
Yeah.
I guess people bring that up in all these. It's like, I got that shirt,
Yeah.
right? Hey, that shirt, I got that
It's
shirt.
come up more than I would have thought. But yeah, we get emotional about our clothes.
Yeah.
It makes sense now. Wasn't expecting it, but yeah.
And Whiplash, yeah. That one disappeared when UCB sold that property, or did Jeremy?
So he moved it's at Union Hall now, and it's a monthly, and Jeremy's still booking it. I still shoot it when I
He
can.
still has his Instagram where it's just him showing his butt.
He has not done that in a while, but Levin Butt, you should look it up. It's very funny. There's a couple of very famous people who did Levin Butts.
It's
Yeah.
it's just it's a commitment to an idea.
Yeah,
It's
it's
so
pretty
fun.
great, yeah.
Okay, and so
So this is yeah, this is more Whiplash.
more Whiplash.
You were just there's one thing that I don't have a photo of that I really kinda wish that I did, which is Jeannie came
Yeah.
with you to the show more than once,
Yes.
and when you were working on something, when you were getting ready for a taping,
Yeah.
the precision.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when you were working on something, I might see you. There was a regular show at Bowery Poetry Club. It was ran by Dan Allen called Saccopuntus.
Yeah.
And you might be on Saccopuntus, and then a couple of days later, you'd be on Whiplash.
Yeah.
And the difference in what the bits had gotten to just in like the 6 days since I last saw it, watching you work on it, and Jeannie in the back of the room writing down and, like, because you guys were gonna do notes in the cab from one show to the next show, and just the precision of how you were working on this,
Yeah.
to me, that's, like it was just really inspiring to see,
Yeah.
but it was also at this point, you had been a big comic for, like, a long time. Like, you were already there, and the fact that you were just like, it was like sometimes there would be a word that was changed
Yeah.
or an order of sentences would get changed, but that you were sweating the details in this way. It was something that I just saw early on in my career and was like, "Oh, so that's what the greats do." It was really
Well,
it
thank
was
you. That's
really cool.
it's one of those things where some of it is I find it very enjoyable, the process.
Yeah.
And, because there's the process, which I love, and then there's the process with Jeannie, which
Yes.
was so unique. And, when we started dating, initially, comedians kind of pride themselves on like writing their own material. It's very sacred. It's like stealing someone's lines or just you don't do. And so having this partnership was, I was reluctant to it, but then it was also, I was so grateful for it because, she really did care and does care. And the weird thing is that just the evolution of our writing partnership. Uh, so we started off like I remember I did Craig Kilborn when he had the Late Late Show, and I was talking to her on the phone before. This is when we were initially dating. I think it was the first week of his show, and eventually Craig Ferguson took over and all that. And we were talking about, I think we were hanging out, and she had this joke about Cisco's dumps like a truck and how it was like, no one wants dumps. Like, what? And so I did it. I was doing panel and I did it. And I was like, I called her and it was taped. And I was like, I did that line we had joked around about and it's really good. And so there was this evolution of where we would write together. And then we wrote this book, Dad is Fat, together. Then we wrote the Jim Gaffigan show together. And then as my kids got older, there is like obviously the priority is our children. So it's like I can't necessarily bother her with like, hey, how about bacon jokes? You know what I mean? It has to evolve where there is obviously the input is significant, but it can't be as granular as it was,
Yeah.
which is bizarre, right? But and some of it is even, she had a brain tumor, and so it was just like we would talk a little bit about it, but you know, I couldn't bother her that much with it, like,
Yeah.
and so it's amazing to kind of consider that evolution because sometimes when I do interviews and everyone's like, "You write everything with your wife," and I'm like, I mean, I did.
Yeah.
I have. I mean, I'm not against it, but it's like it's weird. In some ways, it's kind of like nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's not like Rafifi, but it is this chapter in time when we could write together. So, like, even the fact that I talk about religion in my act is because of my wife, because I had some semblance of jokes, but I was like, I'm not gonna be that guy that talks about religion. It's like, there's people that don't wanna hear about it, and then there's people that are gonna be too sensitive, and she was like, "Just check it out." And so, it's weird, the impact that environment and people have on you is significant.
Yeah, so this is still Whiplash, and another reason that we're wanting to do this podcast is I do think so much of the structure of comedy has changed, and I did just want to talk about, like, just the structure of how things were working in this time, because I think people were making really great work.
Yes.
And a lot of what was going on at this time, people were doing between 3 to 5 sets a night. Now, I don't think every single person for the entirety of their career has to do that. I do think what I see in the archives, like bird's eye view, is that people are who are about to be successful, they keep showing up in these photos. And you just see it. It's like, oh, somebody appears in the archives, and then you're seeing them at a frequency of like, oh, I seem to see them once a week, And it's like, well, then they're about to pop, you know? So it's like Che, he enters the archives,
Yeah.
and then Che exits the archives because he's at Rockefeller Center and we just don't ever see
He's
him
too
again,
busy.
right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I do see him high, Che,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like, and it's like, it's not it you can read the archives and see that he's gonna exit because
Interesting.
you can see it because it's like almost everywhere I go is like, "Oh, is there Che again? Oh, we got a performance shot of Che, we got." But it's and with you in this time, we've already got a layer of photos going and we're not out of 2009.
Right, right, right.
So you're just literally you're out there.
Yeah.
You're popping in on shows. Do you remember what you might have been writing for then?
I think this was probably 2005, 6 was Beyond the Pale, and then 2009 was King Baby, and to go really macro, this was the heyday of, like, a comedy special was very much, you would maybe do one. There was no expectation that people would get multiples, and the blue collar guys had kind of shifted that. This is also the time of Dane kind of being huge. So what was happening also was in 2009, 2006 to 9 or 2003 to 9, there was every dorm room there used to be TVs in dorm rooms. And that TV was on Comedy Central
Yes, it was.
because of The Daily Show, Chappelle's Show, and so what happened to my benefit was there were these hour specials. There was the Comedy Central half-hour specials, but then when they graduated to doing hour specials, they would re-air them, and there was a whole generation. This is before YouTube really was a thing or, obviously, the scrolling that we do today. But like, so people would be in their dorm rooms and there would be my comedy special would serve as like an infomercial for me. And so around 2009, I was done with King Baby and was probably panicking because the first Beyond the Pale probably took me 15 years to write, and then King Baby took me 3 years, and then it was like there was this expectation of when you got to a a city, you would have new material.
Yeah.
Now, there were some comedians that would just they would just kind of burn the market, right? They would either go back too often or they would not have new material. And so it was very much, if I wanna go back to that market, I need new material, and I need new material that would work. There was something about, like, if you look at, like, comedians that have done theaters and now it's arenas, but there were these people that, like there was the Dane, there was the Louis, there was, and then there's, some people move on, some people, they get in trouble, and, but this is like before, I mean, Kevin Hart maybe had a special, I don't know, but I don't think he had hit at this
He
point.
hadn't yet, not quite
But
yet.
Chappelle, the show, either, and I don't know the timing, but, like, that show was so literally magical. I'm so tempted to go off on tangents, but, like, so, like, to answer your question, this was very much if I'm gonna continue, and when I started touring, doing theaters, the expectation was, I'm gonna be able to do this for a year, so which is why I did as many as I could, but eventually this is gonna drop off, and then I got another special, through Comedy Central, and this is before the streaming really took off, or they started doing, I mean, it's transformed so much, but, like, this was the peak of Comedy Central having the important comedy special, whereas prior to this, the most prestigious thing, and obviously it's still very prestigious, is the HBO comedy special. That was the pinnacle. And then this is before the $20 million Men and Women. So, like, that was Chappelle, Seinfeld, Louis, Ellen, there was rumors that they were getting, and I think they were definitely getting 20 million. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Which is just insane, but they would get the viewership that would justify it. So this was, because an hour special, like, it's so strange because now it's like, having done multiple specials, what they serve also is this snapshot in time.
yeah.
So, when I did Beyond the Pale, I had 1 kid. And now
And you thought you were tired?
and now I have the equivalent of 5 teenagers. And so it's just completely a dramatic shift of life experience. So, and similar to even, any other comedian that's done specials over that time. And by the way, we shouldn't, ignore, like, Kathy Griffin has done, like,
Yeah,
20,
so many,
and she used to do them every 3 months, and some of that is topical kind of, here's what Oprah said, stuff like that, and I'm not discounting that because it's still a special, but it was, like, it's just so the snapshot in time, whereas, like, and also Lewis Black would do political things where the relevance of that material, no matter how brilliant it is, he is talking about Dick Cheney,
yeah,
or she's talking about a celebrity of that moment,
yeah,
that whereas, like, it doesn't kind of have the relevance that it did at that time, if it
yeah,
makes sense. I
yeah.
don't know. I think that's interesting.
I think it's very interesting.
Right.
I think, when you set this idea of you're gonna do an hour and how often are you gonna release that hour and the amount of writing involved in that, I d this was just I just remember you at these shows and I keep using that word precision,
Yeah.
but it just was a really lovely thing to watch, and I'm trying so hard not to be Mindy yells at clouds,
Mhm.
but, the writing, I feel like in our community at that
Yeah.
time, everybody was really focused on writing.
Yeah.
And a lot of things today, here she goes again, feel like vibes, less than written and constructed and thought
Well, there's
about. And
style versus substance, right?
it's
But
I'm
I'm a believer that, the entertainment industry is the opposite of a meritocracy, right? And I'm not saying that stand-up is a meritocracy. We have inequality, we have biases and stuff like that. But that's where I think the audience is always can be ahead. They can be, moved by trends, but, Sebastian Maniscalco sold out, I don't know, 7 Madison Square Gardens, and, uh, 3/4 of the entertainment industry didn't know who he was.
right.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, some of it is stand-up can be ahead of the curve, but also it's self-correcting. So, like, there is something of these vibe things that you're talking about, and some of it's personal taste and, but it will self-correct. So it's like, I remember going to Montreal when I started, that was the Holy Land, that was Valhalla, right? If you could get to Montreal. And obviously it got in trouble and it's not as relevant as it once was. But some of it is there are moments in the entertainment industry where you see behind the curtain and you're like, "Oh." And I think that some of those goals shift. So, like, again, some of the efficiency of writing, of uh, a short, clean, meaning not kind of like not filthy, meaning like there's no wasted words.
Yeah,
Some of that might have been a product of the preeminent showcase was these late night shows.
right.
And so when those late night shows lost some of their relevance, which is really sad, that's another chapter,
I'm
right?
so sad about it.
But some of that efficiency of writing, some of this is the reason you want to go to Whiplash is, there is that peer group, right? And for a comedian, your peer group is more important than the audience. So if you're going to you'd rather impress your peer group
Yeah,
than the audience.
yeah.
And so there is something about Whiplash where you can kill. So I'm saying it's like maybe I'm being naive, but I think it's very self-correcting.
Yeah,
And I think that even with AI and all this stuff, it's like live performance, it can't be replaced. There is some value in that. And also, the honesty of stand up and that human connection. Like, there's some comedians, like, I wish everyone could see Brian Regan in a comedy club
mm,
because there's some people that in a comedy club, it's just like there's something very special about some performers, and it doesn't translate well. I think Dave Attell in a comedy club is like
oh my
that
god.
looseness
Yeah,
of it, right? Is but like that's where I think live performance is. And so some of the vibe stuff or like just the because now we're in this age of like content creators, like young comedians, to get some momentum they have to get followers,
right.
right? And so that encourages volume over,
Yeah,
nuance or precision.
yeah.
But I think eventually you have to evolve, right? You have to eventually, and there is always a show like Rafifi or Whiplash or,
Yeah.
and they're all very different shows. Do you know what I mean?
Really, really different. Yeah, when we were talking about Moonwork, I can't think of a show that exists today where I could say to the viewer, "Oh, kind of like show that exists today." And I can't
Yeah.
there's nothing.
Well, it's like even the theater world is and I'm talking about the off-Broadway theater world is different and similar to, like, the, um, Eugene I just keep coming up with Eugene Merman Comedy Festival. Similar to that, like, the Moonwork thing, and they brought it back a couple times. That audience kind of got married and moved to the suburbs too.
They
You know
did.
what I mean? So
They did.
it's a natural, evolution where there's never going to be, uh and sometimes people age with their audience. Like, I think Mulaney and Kroll age well with their audience, whereas, like, the fact that Kroll is playing a dad in a movie is so funny to me because he's this kid, right? But, and I'm sure he's great in the movie, but I don't know. I could just talk about this forever. The Whiplash, there was an excitement there.
Oh, that energy of that room.
Yeah.
I'm really obsessed with talking about how you had the audience on 3 sides.
Yep.
I think that was so, 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 so important. And it just was that energy was just bouncing around. And before the show even began, it was just electric in there.
And was it I think
Free,
it was free. Yeah.
free. And people waited outside, and showtime
And there
was
were the same faces
yes, there
every
were.
week, and some of them, I think one woman, she's a comedian now.
So we have a couple of comedians who enter the archives in the audience of Rafifi. There's a photo of them in the audience before there's a photo of
How
them
ma
on
like, so
stage.
Rafifi, like, what I also remember about Rafifi, and I don't know if it was a Wednesday or a Tuesday show, but, like, and I like, there was a hang after that,
Yes, there
that
will.
was and again, I was like, "I can't believe how fun this is." Like, it was this party atmosphere, and that was also, like, the king of that room was Dimitri.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was an eruption of Dimitri, and it's so interesting because now, of course, there is a New York Times writer that deals with there's multiple that deal with comedy, but, like, in the '90s, there was no journalism for stand-up. What would happen and that's not to say that there weren't, free weeklies or kind of smaller publications. I'm talking about mainstream kind of traditional media. What they would do is they would assign a reporter to go and check out, whether it be New York Magazine or the New York Times, and go and find out who the latest thing is. It was kind of like once every 2 years,
Yep.
they would send someone down. Sometimes they would get it right. They'd be like, Dave Attell is the next Mel Brooks. Sometimes they would miss the barn completely,
Yes.
and there would be a cover story on someone, and everyone in the comedy would be like, "What's going on?" And by the way, some of it is, that's where, being an old timer like me, it's like I understand that, like, the notion of new and discovery is much more sexy than, "Here's a guy who's done 11 specials." That's not as sexy as a single mother who, you know, is doing this one-person show, right? But the thing is that the sometimes it's like, if you're like, the New York Times now is so kind of dialed in, and they have strong points of view, they're independent points of view, but, like, some entertainment magazines, they just obviously grab 10 comedians, and they're right about 5 of them, and then the other 5 are not even doing stand-up in 2 years.
So what you're talking about is one of my I don't know if we call it a pet peeve, I don't know, but one of my raison d'être is there used to be beat reporters, that used to be a thing.
Yeah.
And, I haven't figured this is gonna be part of the book that I write. The Village Voice had a guy, way back in the '60s, and a photo that was hugely influential to me is it's a photo of Bob Dylan and a singer named Karen Dalton and a guy named Fred McNeil. I fully believe that Dylan has this photo framed in his house. I believe that he does because he writes in his book Chronicles that she's his favorite singer, and I believe it's one of the only photos of them together. What I find fascinating about this photo is that the guy knew to take it, and he knew to take it because he was deeply immersed in that scene,
Right.
and he knew that Karen Dalton was at you know what I mean? Like, he knew to go to the venue, and this is before Dylan is, like, the Dylan that we think of today.
Right.
This is early, early days, and the
Is it at
fact
the bitter end or whatever?
I wanna say that it is,
Yeah.
but it's like to my knowledge, it's one of the only photos of them together, and that guy worked for the Village Voice. And his whole thing that he did was he covered the village, and so he knew all the performers, he knew all the venues, and he was just photographing the scene, and there was institutional support for that documentation, and that's why that photo exists, is that there was a guy who was just plugged in. He was just plugged in for the whole thing. And at the time that I started photographing comedy, what I saw is that no one was doing that.
Yeah.
No one knew to be at Rafifi on the night that it closed, and
Yeah.
I just, by accident,
Yeah.
did know, and I did know that it was important, and I did know that it was fascinating, and I will say, I did know at the time, no one's gonna care about this today.
Yeah.
And because I worked for an entertainment website, and I knew what they posted and what they got excited about, and it's 100% what's a thing we can throw together as a
It's a
list
volume
list
business.
of 10 things, but I was interested in being the person who knew to take the photo of Karen Dalton and Bob Dylan,
Yeah.
and that to me is, like, such interesting artistic ground. So I've always felt that I'm this mix of, like, an artist, who, like, would almost prefer to be in her studio painting and
Yeah.
not see anyone for a week, but also this weird part of it is actually journalist, I would say,
Yeah.
and then some kinda, uh, archivist and librarian in a way as well, but there wasn't institutions that were keeping tabs on things, and I think that this is a result of the decline of print media
Yeah.
and an influx of everything's gonna be digital, and here's a publication that lasts for a year, here's a website that has funding for a year, and, here's an app that's gonna disappear in 3
And also
years.
then it's like the desire for or the necessity for it to be clickbait changes
Huge.
the whole thing of where where, you're in an I mean, we've all clicked on something and you're like, "Oh, that title was misleading so that I could click," right? And so then you do these interviews and you're like, some of it is like, I remember an example. It was like when Britney Spears was having some meltdown 20 years ago. And I'm like, why are you asking me about, I don't, like initially I thought, oh, they think that I'm kind of a tabloid comedian. And then I was like, no, they just need something to be the headline,
Yeah,
right? They need that clickbait. And so it is interesting because it propels and it's made roast comedy very attractive.
yeah.
And, like, when I mean, that's a whole other topic, but,
Yeah,
like,
that's an episode.
it's weird because there's something about, a history that I think in this content age, there's a desire for it, which is exciting.
It is exciting, and I'm so grateful that you feel that way because, you know I think there's a scenario where I pull 100 of my favorite photos, I get a book deal, I put it out. I think there's a world where that'd be a pretty easy thing to do. We have all of your contact information. We can just say, "Hey, Jim, we're gonna publish this. Hope you like it. Is that okay?" There's a way to do looking over the archives, but to me, I almost feel like we need this.
Yeah.
I feel like the community spread apart geographically. We had COVID,
Yeah.
we had the strikes, and I feel like kind of taking a moment where everything is so spread out
Yeah.
and just kind of like talking about like, here were the basics, here's what we did, here's what was behind it.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's just when things are so far flung,
Yeah.
it's a good time to recenter.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful to have you in
No,
at
so
especially at the beginning of this process.
yeah.
It's
And
so
I think
special.
it's yeah, first of all, as your business manager,
Yes.
I want you to do the podcast and then do the book.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a coffee book that, like, people that are fans of the podcast will wanna get the book.
I think so.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
I actually think it's 3 books.
Okay.
And I hope the podcast just gets really, really big so I can get a book deal for all 3.
Yeah.
I see it as it's a coffee table book with beautiful photos and very little text, nothing but captions of the date, the venue, the person.
Yeah.
And then it's an oral history book with people talking, for instance, Carol was in yesterday and talked about Moonwork a bit.
Yeah.
And there'd be a little paragraph from her, and then there's a paragraph from you talking about your experience at Moonwork.
Yeah.
And then the 3rd book, I just want to write about being from Alabama.
Yeah.
I do have a, hey, I'm from Alabama and I got to New York before the internet and here's how I did it.
Right.
I got that book in me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's 3, but I do feel like, yeah, let's just kind of bring everybody together for this.
Yeah.
I'm taking pictures of you. I'm taking pictures of everything.
Well, Jim Gaffigan joined me today for what is going to be our first episode, but not our last episode. We only got through about a year and a half,
That's good.
but I had a great time.
I had a great time too. And it is, what I think is so unique about podcasts in general with people in the comedy community is it's an excuse to reconnect. But what's so unique about this is to reconnect and reminisce about specific times.
Yeah.
And also, when you're discussing it with someone who knows the business and this time frame, there is an honesty and affection for what this snapshot is, but also it's not kind of like glory days. It's not like, yeah, that's when we were giants. It's not that. It's much more of, wow, what can we learn from this?
Exactly.
What was going on, like even these unique special shows that we're talking about, like, and I'm sure there are unique special shows now, but, Whiplash, Moonwork, Rafifi, those are some gems,
Yeah.
right? That were pretty instrumental in creating a lot of cultivating and curating great comedy.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back.
I'm taking pictures of you. I'm taking pictures of everything. A woman likes to roam.